So, welcome to the Power Couple podcast, where we are all more powerful than we know. Today, we are joined by a very special guest, Jonathan Goldman, who I first heard on the Paul Check podcast, Living in 4D. And not only was my mind blown away, but my humming chords were blown away with some amazing tools that we can all apply in our daily lives, which you may be surprised to learn just how simple yet how profound what we're going to talk about is today. So, Bodana, you want to give Jonathan a little introduction,
Yes,
please?
yes. Our wonderful Jonathan Goldman, MA, is an international authority and pioneer in the field of sound healing. He is author of numerous books, including The 7 Secrets of Sound Healing and the best-selling The Humming Effect, co-authored with his lovely wife, Andy Goldman, which won the 2018 Gold Visionary Award for Health Books. His classic Healing Sounds has just had a special 30th anniversary edition released. Jonathan is director of the Sound Healers Association and president of Spirit Music, Inc. in Boulder, Colorado. A Grammy nominee, he has created over 25 best-selling, award-winning recordings, including Chakra Chants, The Divine Name with Greg Braden, Frequencies, Sounds of Healing, and Reiki Chants. Jonathan has been named as one of Watkins Mind, Body, Spirit magazine's 100 most spiritually influential living people. He has been inducted into the Massage Therapy Hall of Fame. And in 2023, Jonathan received the Distinguished Person of the Year Award from the Association for Comprehensive Energy Psychology for his pioneering contribution to the field of sound and energy. And that's at www.healingsounds.com.
Wow.
So welcome, Jonathan. We're so excited to have you here today.
Greetings, power couple. How are you both?
Super. We are super excited to speak with you today. Dive into this amazing topic.
Yeah. So, Jonathan, thanks again for joining us and for giving us and the audience opportunity to learn a little bit more about you. Maybe if we can just start off with your story, and if you can tell us how you got involved in the area of healing and sounds.
Well, Roman Badam, we have so much to cover that I'm going to keep this relatively long story short. I can embellish it or make it fascinating, but instead I'll just say I was playing in a rock and roll band in the late 1970s in Cape Cod, Massachusetts. I came back from a break, strapped on one of my Fender Stratocasters, got up to the audience, and I started playing with this band, and I became aware that the music that I was creating was helping to manifest an energetic of negativity and violence. Now, no doubt the alcohol and the intoxicants of the people in the club was also doing this. But I also realized that the music that I was creating at the time was doing this. I've been playing professionally for about 15 years. It's the first time that that thought ever came into my mind. Before that, it was always, look at me, aren't I great? That type of thing. And lo and behold, I had this thought, what if music can be used to make people feel good? That's all, just that thought. And it was literally, I like to say, the voice of God that struck me that night when I was on the stage, because within a week that shifted to, what if sound can be used to heal? And after that, just doors, windows, and portals into other dimensions began to open for me as I began to explore the realm of sound as a healing and transformational modality. And that was back in the late 70s. Shortly after that, I literally began working with a woman named Sarah Benson, who was one of my great mentors. I like to call her the divine mother of sound healing, and she and my wife are both dear friends of hers. I founded then the Sound Healers Association, got a master's degree from Lesley University researching the uses of sound music for healing, took my record company, which had been a new wave record company, and it just turned it to a new age record company. And I didn't have to change the name of the company, which was spirit music. And since then, it's just been a wild and miraculous journey through the stars.
I
Uh,
bet.
and so many people play that kind of music or are musicians that aren't aware of that kind of the frequency. There's a lot of talk about the 432 hertz versus 440 hertz. So it's I wonder, and feel free to tell us as much as you feel comfortable, but what was it in your soul that kind of almost that was it the universe that kind of told you, or that gave you that inner sense of knowing that what you were creating wasn't maybe in line with the divine?
Well, Roman, at the time that this all was happening, there were about 5 or 10 books on the subject and about 5 or 10 recordings on the subject. So it was all relatively new and all very, very exciting. And I'm going to honor my friend and colleague, Stephen Halpern, whose book and whose music really was instrumental in putting me on my path. And Stephen is still there. Uh, and another fellow by the name of Dr. John Beaulieu, who's a brilliant naturopath, brilliant psychotherapist, brilliant many things, who's the author of Music and Sound, The Healing Arts, and a few other people. So on one level, I am standing on the shoulders of giants. A man by the name of Dr. Peter Guy Manners,
Oh
an
yeah.
osteopath from England, who was my mentor and who invented a machine that uses the direct application of the use of sound on the body for healing many years ago, and all these other people. So there's a lot going on, and I think that I've been given the assignment of helping bring awareness of sound and music for healing onto the planet. And I continue to try to do that. I'm going to just immediately jump to the different magic frequencies. I have this book here. Do I have a copy of it here? Yes, indeed. Copy of the 7 Secrets of Sound Healing from Hay House. And I don't know which chapter it is, but there's a subchapter within it that basically says there is no magic frequency. I'm going to say that again and again. And rather than talk about why people may have certain beliefs and certain frequencies, because I'm going to tell you that I'm responsible for bringing down some of these frequencies. I perhaps did not mean to bring them down as single frequencies. They were meant to be brought down as intervals, but at the same time, they're there. But I'd like to basically talk to you at least about what we call the 4 pillars of sound healing. That'll probably explain a whole lot of things. Would you excuse me for just one very moment?
Absolutely.
Sure.
Oh, Jonathan, we can't hear you.
Well, and that's
There
because
you
I
are.
turned the microphone off for a moment and didn't know how to turn it on.
It happens to us all the time. That's all right.
Okay, so what my wife Andy and I call the 4 pillars of sound healing. The first one is that everything is in vibration. In the beginning was the Word, and the Lord said, "Let there be light." Our modern quantum physicists and our ancient mystic masters have told us that everything is in a state of vibration. And this really seems to be true, from the electrons moving around the nucleus of an atom to planets in distant galaxies moving around their suns. They're all in a state of vibration. If they are in a state of vibration, they're all potentially creating a sound. This includes our body. Every organ, every bone, every tissue, every part of our body is in a state of vibration. When we're in a state of health, we say we're in sound health. And basically, our every organ, every bone, every tissue is like this wonderful orchestra that's playing the symphony of the self. Every part of our body is in wonderful harmonic resonance. What happens if the second violin player loses their sheet music? They begin to play out of tune, out of harmony. Pretty soon, the entire string section sounds off. Pretty soon, the entire orchestra sounds off. And this is, if you like, going with our metaphor, the idea that a portion of our body is vibrating at its wrong frequency. It's vibrating out of ease, out of harmony. And we call it dis-ease. So the basic idea of using sound as a healing modality is simply to give the string player back to sheet music and somehow create a frequency, sound, tone, or whatnot that allows whatever is vibrating out of resonance to go back into resonance. And that is also, if you like, a metaphor for almost every modality of non-traditional medicine, for want of a better term, holistic medicine, whether it's chiropractic, acupuncture, naturopathy, chromotherapy, all of them use that idea of putting the body back into balance. Now, there are two different ways that sound can affect this. One is, it's called psychoacoustics. The sound goes into our ear, into our brain, affects our nervous system, our heart rate, our brain waves. That's huge. Nervous system is affected. Wow, that's huge. The other one is called vibroacoustics. Sound goes into our body, into affecting us on a cellular level, going down and affecting our DNA. That's called vibroacoustics. A lot of people are not that aware of this, but let me give you a quote from the New York Times Science section, February 8th, 1988. A lot of eights, so I remember that number. Sound shaped into dazzling tool can make, break, or rearrange molecular structure. So when people say, well, what sort of conditions can be healed with sound? And you can use sound as a metaphor for all sorts of vibrational aspects. But if you can basically rearrange molecular structure, what can you not do potentially with sound? So these two different ways, psychoacoustics, vibroacoustics. And then there are two different approaches to using sound as a healing modality. One, we call the constructive, and this is basically to enhance the frequencies of an organ, bone, or tissue that basically is weakened. And this would be the work of Dr. Peter Guy Manners, for example. He used cymatic therapy. His instrument basically would use different frequencies to enhance those of the natural vibrations of the organ. And then you have a deconstructive, and this is closer to the work of Dr. Royal Rife, who basically used frequencies to basically shatter the vibrations of an intruder, such as, doing the death ray for a virus or whatnot. And then I like to see that in the future, we're going to have both of these working together, both a frequency to enhance the organ and another frequency to, shall we say, sterilize the environment as best as possible so that we can be in a state of radiance and health. Okay, I'm going to take a breath because I just went through a whole lot. I went through a PhD worth of programs with you in about 5 minutes. Any questions on that one?
Fabulous. That was a great summary. So first of all, thank you for that.
Yeah. So, thank you for that, Jonathan. I have so many questions for you on that, but I want to make sure that we keep on, if you wanted to keep going on
I'm going to keep going, and I'm going to tell you that about the second secret. The first is everything is vibration. The second is that intent is powerful. Okay, power couple. I am finishing my master's dissertation from Lesley University. I have gotten a pile of papers that basically work with different systems of using sound and music for healing that I've been assembling over the years. And this is in the early 80s. So it's about 1985 that I put this all together. And I've got a stack of papers with different systems to resonate the chakras, different system to resonate the organs. And coming from a family of doctors, father, grandfather, brother, all medical doctors, I said, okay, I had a really well-developed left brain. I said, I'm going to put this all together and be the first person who basically coalesces all this information, comes out and brings it to the public, because this is relatively new at the time. I'm sitting in front of a computer that has got a DOS operating system, just where it's a dark screen, amber letters, and it's waiting for me to input information. I'm going through this stuff, which I've been collecting for years. And it's not correlating. You have Dr. X using a particular set of frequencies for one organ, Dr. Y using a completely different set of frequencies for the same organ, or Spiritual Master A using a mantra for a particular chakra, and Spiritual Master B or C using different mantras for the same chakra. Going, how can this be? How can this be? I'm sitting there rocking in front of the screen. My head in my hand in a state of intellectual angst, going, oh my God, this makes no sense, no sense. And all of a sudden I hear an inner voice say, it is not only the frequency of the sound that creates the effect, it is also the intention of the person making and receiving the sound. And I wrote down these words: frequency plus intent equals healing on a dark screen with amber cursors almost in gold. Frequency plus intent equals healing is flashing in front of me.
I love that.
And back then, about 1984, different doctors and scientists that I would talk to, I said, have you ever considered the importance of intentionality? And they'd look at me like I was a man from another planet, which I well may be, but they weren't supposed to know that. But nowadays, this is so accepted. We have the wonderful work of people like Dr. Bruce Lipton with his biology of belief, or Joe Dispenza, you are the placebo, or Masaru Emoto doing his wonderful work with water crystallization, showing that the consciousness and energy and intentionality of people coupled with the sounds that were used can either make something look pristine and crystalline or like mud. So, but at the time it was like, oh, you know, frequency, what are you talking about? Nowadays, I say frequency plus intent, to go, yes, indeed, intent. So powerful, to such a degree that a fellow named Wayne Dyer used to do PBS specials on the power of intent. What a blessing. So it makes it a whole lot easier nowadays.
Oh.
So intent is powerful. It's the second of the four pillars. The third one I particularly want to share. This is, we're all unique vibratory beings. Oftentimes I would begin workshops saying, okay, how many of you are allergic to penicillin? And anywhere from 5 to 20% of an audience would raise their hand. I said, okay, if everything in the universe is in a state of vibration, then penicillin is a vibration, series of frequencies perhaps. And for 80% of you, it is a healing vibration, but for 5 to 20% of you, it is toxic. Therefore, you know, we have to realize that we are all unique and that not one frequency, nutritional supplement, or anything works the same way for everyone, except perhaps for air and perhaps for water. And even, you know, you can OD on water, as hard as that is to believe, but, you know, everything in balance. But therefore, the idea that people come up with these, this is the magic frequency that is going to heal you of everything. Well, look, if you believe that this frequency is going to have a certain effect, there's a very big aspect that probably the placebo effect is anywhere from 60 to 80% effective, that it's going to have an effect anyway. But at the same time, bottom line, having been one of the people, maybe the person who brought down one frequency that a lot of people encode and believe, there's a whole cult that it is the frequency of love. I'm just going to suggest to you that it would be a heinous thing if a mother holding a baby and rocking a baby and singing a lullaby had to look at a guitar tuner to make sure she was singing in the right key in order to be projecting the frequency of love. That would be so sad. That would be such a limitation of our consciousness. That would be such a limitation of our overall gestalt as humans. So I share that with you as a metaphor for everything else. If you have a belief that a particular frequency is going to have major healing effects, I want to honor that and say, hey, go for it. But at the same time, I just think if we can be all that we can be and be more than we think we are, then we don't want to limit ourselves to specifications of the effects of any thought form such as a frequency.
Okay.
And lastly, the last of the four secrets, or at least the four pillars of sound healing. There are few other secrets in the seven secrets, but these are primary, is that silence is golden. This is something that as people become more and more focused on the power of sound to heal, they get very enamored with the incredible, oh my goodness, beautiful sound. And they just get into making the sound all the time. They don't understand that silence is the yin to the yang of sound. It is a place where the true shifts and changes can occur from the assimilation of the frequency into the body, brain, etheric fields. If you immediately change from one frequency to another frequency, you're not giving the cell, the psyche, or whatnot the time to assimilate, change, and rearrange its vibratory field. Silence is the yin to the yang of sound. If you think about it, the word listen and the word silent are anagrams. And it is in silence that we can truly get to know the higher level of the self. Okay, I'm going to take a breath now. That was a whole lot of information.
Yeah, no, thank you.
That was brilliant.
Yeah,
Wow.
and see, fellow subscribers, this is all free. You're getting education here that you probably never will get anywhere else. I've never gotten in the university, but anyway, I digress. Jonathan, if I can make two comments on what you said about the pillar 3 and pillar 4. Again, and everything in nature is a power couple. That's why we like to call ourselves a power couple. Everything is yoked, right? Yin and yang, blue light and red light. And I find it very fascinating that when you found out the formula for healing, you put intent in there, you found out that intent has to be coupled with frequency, that you codified healing into that. So you already had the intent, which of healing, which helped you find the actual formula to be combined with frequency so you can get to healing. So it was kind of like you're imprinting your intent on that formula. I guess you found it because you wanted to heal. So the intent was there.
That was my intent there. Another one, a subcorollary, if you like, because I was mostly working with the voice, was vocalization plus visualization equals manifestation, which is very similar, but a little bit different. But there's what do you want to manifest? And at the time that I came up with this, I thought I was so original. Oh my goodness gracious, what a great discovery I was. And then I realized that all the basic magical and spiritual traditions on the planet had utilized vocalization plus visualization equals manifestation in their different traditions since the beginning. I maybe had codified it as this formula, but it certainly wasn't original. But you're there. Yes, my intention was healing. I imagine that one could also utilize sound for a very, very different intent, but that is not the playground that I abide in.
Mm-hmm.
If I can just, there's a lot for me that I've connected with in your messaging and these pillars. Just from when we were talking earlier, and I told you a little bit about my story, right? And my rock bottom, I'll say, was those 8 years ago where I burnt out completely. And when you were talking about the silence at that moment, because I used to love music, I listened to all kinds of music, but at that moment, what I needed the most was that silence. And then eventually, as I brought back sound into my life and the music, it was a complete change, because it's almost like I was listening to what my soul needed more so than what the most recent pop star was singing about or whatnot. I really got more in tune with that. So hearing you talk about that just really made a lot of connections for me, and it was part of my healing process. I needed to tune in to that, not to use a musical pun, but to be able to initiate part of that, because there was just far too much going on, like we talked about before, the overwhelm too. So that silence, and then transition again to healing sounds, including, as we mentioned too, our talk before we started the podcast, about nature. Those for me are some of the most healing sounds. Hearing the chickadee in the morning, things like that, it's just lights up my soul. So I just wanted to share that with you. Thank you.
And thank you so much. And I will also, this reminded me of the fact that I don't want to suggest that, rock and roll or whatnot is bad. The music I was creating at the time was, shall we say, not of the highest resonance. And I put down my guitars for a few years because I was convinced that rock and roll was the devil's music. And then I realized, wait a minute, let's look at what the music is. You look at the Beatles, you look at "And in the End, the Love You Take is equal to the love you make." Some of the highest vibratory, if you like, verbiage that's ever been created. And so you can't look at any one genre. You have to look at every piece of music and how it makes you feel. And one other thing that I want to suggest, that any music, depending upon the time, the place, and the need of the individual, can be therapeutic. Now, when you're 15 years old and your metabolism is way different than when, I'm in my 70s, and it's quite different than when I was 15. And the music and the choices that I make are very, very different. So what works for a 15-year-old may or may not work for me, and vice versa. I mean, these days, I listen to a whole lot more Frank Sinatra than I did when I was, into, Hendrix, and I'm still way into Hendrix. But I've incorporated some of Frank Sinatra and Barbara Streisand in. Oh my goodness gracious!
I love it. I love it. It's so very true. Absolutely. And I have to add, I'm a huge Beatles fan. So your reference, spot on. That's what I've always thought.
I'll just tell you, the Beatles brought my wife and I together, so they are heavily in our sphere of consciousness.
I love it.
Yeah, and that's, I think, intention and silence are so yoked together also, because we're very afraid to be sit in silence. It's threatening to us. And
Oh yeah,
right, because we have to tap into our feelings, and then those feelings come up, but that is the root of intention, to understand really what our intentions are. So it's fascinating how our physical self is really tied to that mental emotional state, and how when we learn to control that emotional state, maybe not control, but just to feel it, then it gives our physical body more room to move. So yeah,
Roman,
thank you for
I'm gonna just jump in, and just as you're saying, I'm sure you would agree that with the advent of the internet and cyber technology, we're just overwhelmed with information and with images, thoughts, and whatnot that are distracting us from getting into that center point. That stuff is consciously done. Here's an image here, here's an image here, follow me, follow me. And that's great, except it really distracts us from our true center of being. So thank you for bringing that up.
Oh, thank you, Jonathan. Yeah.
Well, I have another question. So when we think about sound, we're thinking about, like you said, what we can, most of the time, is what we can actually hear. The everyday person would refer to sound that way. But I was just thinking, in our work with electromagnetic fields, and talking about going back to the DOS system. You remember when the internet used to crank up, you wait for it, and it made all those noises, while it's connecting, right? So now we don't hear any of that anymore, but we do know that those sound frequencies are there. I guess just like akin to a dog being able to hear certain sounds that us as humans can't. So I was wondering what your input is in terms of those sounds that aren't available to our ears, but are there, and how they impact.
And we're really talking about EMF, electromagnetic frequencies, that may be far beyond our realm of hearing. They may not even be in the realm of sound, but they are in the realm of vibration. And sadly, they're here to stay. I think they are. As you were saying, boy, if we can get out to nature, what a blessed thing that is, because that, at least that is something that helps counteract some of the negative effects of a lot of these frequencies. But a lot of those, if you like, waveforms are here to stay. And I know people who try to shield themselves, and I think that's brilliant. That's all great. But at the same time, how do we, I don't want to say protect, how, but close to that, when we're in a field that is counter to our natural health of vibration, what do we do?
Mm.
And, as I sit here with a quartz crystal over here, or a tuning fork over here, or a Tibetan bowl over here, I'd say that sometimes sound can be at least a wonderful, wonderful tool. And look, as a reality base, I'm here in the in Boulder, and in the summer, on either side of me, on a Wednesday, Thursday, or Friday, we have lawnmowers, leaf blowers, and whatnot. And I'm so sound sensitive. And, here I'm sometimes, trying to do a podcast or whatnot. This is my recording studio, so it's pretty soundproof, but all this stuff is going on. And, what do you do? How do you use it? Because that is a metaphor for all the EMF stuff that we're being smashed with. And one of the great things that we can also do, and I'm going to share this with you, this is leading somewhere, believe it or not, is we can work with our own self-created sounds to create a deep, powerful, resonant, natural, vibratory, sonic core. And the best way that I know to do this one, we can listen to sounds that work with us. That's great. We can use all these different toys, crystal bowls, which I have, etc. But for the last about 5, 6, 7 years, my wife and I have really been focused on the power of the hum. Wait a second. As I say that, this is just me. This is the Heyoka in me, the jokester. But the power of the hum manifest in our fabulous best-selling book, The Humming Effect. And I want to talk a little bit with you about the power of the hum because it is so important. I have been in the field of sound healing for close to 50 years now. I can do Tibetan deep voice chanting. I can do all sorts of amazing mantras and stuff, but most people can't. And my wife, Andy, and I were going, okay, what's a sound that everybody can make that they won't be judgmental about? Because people are so judgmental about their voices, particularly ever since shows like American Idol and all that stuff. New terms like being pitchy and whatnot have come into our consciousness. And we looked to each other and went, the hum, okay? Babies hum, the elderly hum, everybody can hum. And it's a sound everybody can make. And we thought, okay, we are going to write a book on the power of the hum. And as we began to investigate it deeper and deeper, it became one of the most incredible spiritual sounds in existence. But the reality is, we thought, this is going to be the first book on the power of the hum. Nobody's going to take it seriously unless we do the first chapter as nothing more or less than peer-reviewed scientific medical information on the physiological benefits of the hum. So I'm just going to quickly go through some of the things that happen when we do what we call conscious humming. You get increased oxygen in your cells, get lowered blood pressure and heart rate. You get increased levels of melatonin, which of course enhances sleep and helps depression. You get reduced levels of cortisol, stress-related hormones. You get the release of endorphins, those wonderful self-created opiates that work as natural pain relievers. You get the release of nitric oxide, a molecule associated with healing. It is a vasodilator, which means it widens the blood vessels, allowing more oxygen to flow throughout the body. And it also enhances neuroplasticity, which rebuilds and repairs our nervous system. And it is also an antiviral agent. So how cool that if you got some sort of stuff going on in your, shall we say, sinus cavity or whatnot, that you can do conscious humming. Also, you get the release of oxytocin, which is the trust hormone. You get increased heart rate variability, reducing stress, and you basically get increased vagal toning, vagus nerve toning, which enhances the parasympathetic system of the autonomic nervous system.
Wow.
So that's just, in a nutshell, some of the things that we've discovered right now about this. Everybody can hum. So with that in mind, I want to just then talk about conscious humming, which is a little bit different than humming zippity doo-dah or whatnot. It's got a few protocols. I'd like to share those with you if I may.
Please, yes.
Number one, you need to keep your lips closed. If you open your lips, go, the sound is going out and not contained in here, which makes the hum the most powerful vibro acoustic sound that we can make. Number two, I want you to play a game with me. Would you do a hum and then just pinch your nose and tell me what happens?
All right. Ready?
And on one note, right?
Okay. No, you stop humming.
You can't hum. Right. So all the, if you like, sonic energy is being kept within the cranial area and in the nasal area. And I'm like, how cool is that then? That if you didn't know that blocking your nose keeps you from humming, are there other things about the hum that you might not know about? So you want to keep your lips closed. You want to hum on one note that is comfortable for you. And usually that note is within your conversational voice. A lot of people are into trying to find out what is their frequency, what is their sound. And I'm going to suggest that it's probably somewhere within your conversational voice. If you're doing a normal conversational voice, I'm not going to get into, and I'd love to, but not enough time to talk about something called the Tomatis effect. You can all, if you like, research this, the work of Dr. Alfred Tomatis, who found out that the voice can only duplicate those sounds that the ear can hear. So if somebody's got a voice that's kind of sounds like this, or it sounds like this, it's not a vocal problem, it's a hearing problem. They're not hearing the missing frequencies. Worthwhile checking out, but doing it in a normal conversational voice is doing the hum. Hum at a comfortable pitch. You want to do it for 4 or 5 times. And you start out by taking some nice, deep breaths. Because as you know, breath is the essence of life. And you could say that sound is breath made audible. So that is the aspects of conscious humming. And I recently did a wonderful, very large internet podcast, and I didn't change my settings on my, if you like, audio, so that, and what happened was after about 2 or 3 seconds, the noise suppression on Zoom cut it out. So unless we both have our noise suppression things cut off now, which might be a little too much, I'm going to say that when we do this, let me see if I can find this and do it immediately, at least for myself. Might be able to do it. Audio settings. What's he doing here? Oh, let's see. Can I find this? Nah, can't do it. Became too complicated, kids. But the fabulous removing background noise suppression. No, personal. Original sound isolation. Now, is this going to come on as we do this? Let's see. I don't know if this is going to work. Live performance. Okay, now they're unable to do it. Okay, sorry to take your time.
No.
But what'll probably happen is that I'll begin to make a hum, and we'll do this, and it'll cut off after about 2 or 3 minutes, because the Zoom microphone senses the hum, one consistent sound, as an unwanted background noise. So this was a mystery till I consulted a sound expert. But if you try this on your own, we'll do this 3 times just because, but just to give an idea for everyone, because it's so important.
Mhm.
And first thing you want to do is check yourself out. Take a couple of nice deep breaths. Maybe if possible, even just close your eyes, check yourself out. Deep, nice diaphragmatic breath. And then we'll sound forth with the first of 3 hums, just for an idea. And here's the first. Mm. And now the second. Mm.
I think you're cut out.
And now the third. Mm. And then be in silence for an equal amount of time.
Yeah, I think it was too powerful for Zoom.
Yeah.
It was. Well, what
Yeah.
happened was that it literally released some stuff in my sinus cavity. I had to sneeze, so I turned it off.
Look how that, see? Proof is in the pudding.
It works. It works. So did you feel anything from that? Did you try it?
We didn't try it. We were listening for yours, and then, like you
I
Oh.
said,
try. Yeah, I just went.
So when you get off, try this
we will.
yourself 3 to 5 times. It's a fabulous, fabulous daily practice that can only enhance your immunological system, only enhance your essence, your relationship to the divine core, for want of a better term. Do all sorts of things, 3 to 5 minutes. If you have a meditation practice, believe it or not, humming can be a great meditation practice. Here's one for you. A lot of people into yoga these days. Something called the Yoga Sutras, done by a guy named Patanjali thousands of years ago. Every spiritual master has done their own translation of it. Big into Swami Satchidananda, because I am a child of the Woodstock Nation. And he opened up Woodstock by having 500,000 people chant together.
Hmm.
Andy and I were teaching in his ashram. He had passed, but it was an ashram that he did called Yogaville, believe it or not. And there was his translation of the Yoga Sutras. I picked up the Yoga Sutras, opened it up, and there it was, Sutra 1.27. And this is Jonathan Goldman's synthesis of what it says, but it's basically true. The original sound of creation was pranava, the humming of prana. They had to give it a name, so they called it Om. And if you think about it, the Om is mostly a hum. So it's all. So there's a very, very advanced form of yoga called Brahmari pranayama, which is nothing more or less than humming. So you can take humming, you can do it incredibly mystical way. Brahmari pranayama. In the humming effect, we have a chapter on Brahmari pranayama. You can encode the hum with all sorts of intentionalities. If you have a headache, you can project the sound there with the intention of doing it. If you have congestion, all that stuff. And it's really useful and really powerful as a daily practice. And one last one, because you are a power couple, as are my wife and I.
Yes, indeed.
But at the same time, stuff happens, and sometimes you're not necessarily on the same resonant frequency, and sometimes you want to use sound. Look, bottom line, we can use our conversational voice as a healing sound if we encode it with the energies of love. But if you're angry with each other, you can also use it as a non-healing sound. Here's a little trick. If you guys or anyone listening ever gets out of alignment with either a partner, a friend, a spouse, or a child, hum together. You have to first agree that beforehand you are going to, the sound that you're going to make is going to be a positive sound, and you're not going to yell at each other or whatnot. So you have to just sit there and go, okay, we're going to, Andy will say, hey, Jonathan, let's ohm together. And okay, ohm. And after about 3 or 4 times, all of a sudden, it's amazing how fast and powerful it is. It'll shift and change everything. You look at each other and go, hey, you probably forget what you were originally ticked off about, because all of a sudden you're in resonance together through the simple hum or an ohm or an ah or whatever you want. It's a great tool. We have another book called Chakra Frequencies, and we have a chapter on using that as a tool to get together, because we have to use what we can, because life is challenging and sometimes you're not always on the same page.
Absolutely. That's fascinating.
And Jonathan, I think that's, so many of us here that we need compromise in relationships. And I disagree with that, because I think you're compromising your character. I would like to say that we should search for a higher truth, that we don't need to necessarily compromise ourselves, but we need to sometimes become more uncomfortable with what we need to maybe step outside of ourselves sometimes. And I think with that humming exercise, what's great is that you do have to become a little vulnerable and step out of your comfort zone, which goes back to that intention part, that if you really want to make things work, you're going to come together and make it work, even if you feel like a fool. And I don't think it's foolish, because I've done your humming exercise and I can feel my anxiety lessen and all these things, my blood pressure lessen. But I just think that, if you give love a chance, if you give your your body a chance, there is so much power in that. So it's kind of all I wanted to say on that.
Oh, Rowan, beautiful. And I want to also just suggest something you just reminded me. I think that actually 2 things. One we call compassionate understanding, which I think is so important, is the fact that, it's the old, adage of walking a mile in someone else's moccasins. You may not agree with someone, but to make them wrong doesn't really work really well in going very far, in resonating with them. And also, from my perspective, one of the keys to evolutionary understanding is fluidity, being fluid. If we are rigid, we're going to be like the shaft, not the shaft of the board that snaps in a wind, as opposed to a shaft of wheat that bends with it. So we have to be fluid in relationship. So I just want to honor that as my thoughts after many, many years, of working together. And I just honor everything. So I share that with you. And before I leave, mention Swami Satchidananda, who led 500,000 people chanting together. And I think this is one of the reasons why Woodstock was really the great archetypal metaphor for peace, love, and understanding over 4 or 5 days. There were not, incredible violent activities that occurred on a massive level. That would happen for the most part these days, if I think a lot of people got together without that sort of field, because it's all in the field that we're creating. And we have coming up on February 14th, an event called World Sound Healing that was probably stimulated back in the 1960s in my psyche when I experienced that. And later on in the early 2000s, when an inner voice said, okay, you have helped bring awareness of the use of sound and music for personal healing to the planet. Now we want you to continue that and focus your attention and extending that to healing the planet. What we decided to do was we created a day called World Sound Healing Day, when people throughout the planet can create, if you like, a sonic Valentine, because we chose Valentine's Day, February 14th, as a day when tens of thousands of people project intentionalized sound to the Gaia matrix, our Mother Earth. And in my deepest of meditations, I realize that at this point in time and space in our evolutionary development, the greatest thing that we can do to shift our planet is work with the consciousness of the entirety of the planet. And the best way that we can do that is ultimately sound. And the best sound that I know is the intentionalized, sacred sound that we normally create, rather than a technological sound that somebody else says is good for you. So whatever sound you want to make. So I'm going to suggest that if people are interested, that they go to our the World Sound Healing Day website, which is worldsoundhealingday.org, and they'll see usually hundreds of different activities, and they can either add and do an activity themselves, just join in with an activity. And really, we found this phenomenon called the Global Consciousness Project, which is a way out of Princeton, New Jersey, which is a way that you can literally measure the vibratory field. I'm not going to get into this now, but they used random number generators, and they found that events of high compassion create, even with computers, random number generators. They create the numbers being less random because of, for some reason, so that you can literally chart this, and you can find that there's some sort of something is going on a quantum level that allows shift and change to occur. I like to say, through our light, our love, and our sound, we can make a difference. We have a choice.
That's beautiful.
Thank you, Jonathan. We honor everything you've done and you're doing, and we are so honored to be part of. We were born after Woodstock, but we feel like we're part of it.
Yes.
So
Wish we were there.
and just to give our listeners some practical steps too, it's great that you gave the website. Is there any certain time or anything that people could do a hum, or is there anything like that, like where everybody would, or is it just kind of like you go to the site and you kind of pick different activities?
It should be self-explanatory. I'll tell you that
Okay.
if I had my druthers, I'd have everybody make an ah sound for 5 minutes, encoded with the energy of love, at 12 o'clock New York time. But for a world event, do you know how New York-centric that is?
Yeah.
Yes.
Why New York time would you pick? Why would you pick New York time, just to make it easy?
That was just okay. Hey, all right, we could do
Yeah.
San Francisco time, we could do
Right.
Tokyo time.
Yeah.
Any of them or none of them are going to work for a planetary level.
Mm.
So that's why we have a World Sound Healing Day. Oftentimes we tell people, do it at 12 o'clock your local time, so that there's a wave of compassionate sound surrounding the planet.
Yeah.
And, we used to have just the hum or the ohm, but now sonic creation can be a tone, music, even silent sound. People do everything from Grammy musicians playing stuff, Tibetan monks chanting, chamber orchestras, kirtans, poems, all sorts of things, whatever works, because any sound, as long as it is created with the energy of kindness, compassion, that's a whole nother thing. But one of the highest vibratory fields that we can create on the planet is gratitude, appreciation, and compassion. Be grateful for something, breathe it in, project it on the sound that you're doing, and you're going to be in good shape.
Love that.
Oh, listen, lastly, let people know how they can get in touch with me, which is healingsounds.com. I keep myself out for the most part of World Sound Healing Day. I do an activity, but I don't want it to be Jonathan Goldman's, because it's a co-creative event by thousands of people because I can't do it myself. But if you like, a small amount of conscious people can massively counterbalance. It's said that just one highly compassionate and conscious person can outweigh the energetics of 7 million angry people, because the energy of fear and anger is that weak.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that makes sense.
Again, as the Beatles said, all you need is love.
They had it.
Yep, they
Wow.
did. They sure did.
Wow. Well, thank you so much. I have no words, just
Yeah.
silence to honor
Mind
you
blown.
with.
Yes.
Indeed. Well, hey, many blessings of light and love through sound to you both.
Thank you.
Thank
And to
you.
you as well, Jonathan.
And if we can cut it there.